Welcome to Litbit channel. Today we will see the origin and growth of comedy of humor. Let's we see the origin, the concept of humor. The term humor comes from medieval medical theory. Back then, people believed that four bodily fluids or humors, blood, phylum, yellow bile, and black bile, controlled not only physical health but also personality. For example, excess of blood made a person cheerful and lively. Too much phylum made someone calm or even lazy. Excess yellow bile caused aggression or anger. Too much black bile lead to sadness or melancholy. In drama, humor was used to describe characters dominated by one of these traits. These lead to exaggerated and often comedic portrayals of individuals with a single controlling personality traits. Next one, historical context. The comedy of humor begins in the late 16th century as a specific type of comedy. It became a tool for mocking social flaws and human behaviors through exaggerated characters. Ben Jonson was inspired by Roman playwrights like Plautus and Terence, who wrote comedies with stock characters, for example, the greedy old man or the boastful soldiers. Johnson's adapted their ideas using the concept of humor to represent the dominant passions or flaws of this character. Next one, pioneering work. Every Man in His Humor in 1598 by Ben Jonson is a first formal comedy of humor. In this play, Johnson's introduced characters driven by a single dominant trait such as jealousy and vanity. The play is a landmark because it combined classical influence with a realistic depictions of contemporary English society. Next, we will see the growth of comedy of humor. Ben Jonson's contributions. Johnson expanded the comedy of humor with works like Wellborn in 1606 and The Alchemist 1610. He added a sharp satirical edge, criticizing greed, hypocrisy, and other moral failing of his society. His plays were not just entertaining, these held up a mirror to society, making people reflecting on their flaws. Next one, characteristics of growth. First one, realism. The setting of Johnson's play becomes more grounded in reality, often set in urban locations like London. These made the satire relatable to the audience. Next one, character type. Johnson simplified characters, making them types that represents specific flaws such as a greedy merchant or a wine noble. These figures were easy for the audience to recognize. Next one, satirical tone. The plays becomes harsher in their critics of human nature, mocking the greed, vanity, and stupidity of society. Moral undertone. Beneath the humor, there was a serious message. Johnson's plays urged audience to recognize their own weakness and strive for self-improvement. Next one, influence on other playwrights. Johnson's success inspired other writers such as Thomas Middleton, a trick to catch the old one, a comedy, greed and deception. John Marston, the moral content, that is a darker satire about hypocrisy and corruption. These playwrights adapted Johnson's formula of exaggerated characters and urban satire, but they often lacked sharp wit and depth of social critics. Next one, decline and evaluation. By the mid 17th century, audience more variety and depth in plays. The rigid structures of the comedy of humors with its fixed characters and predictable plots becomes outdated. However, the genre influenced new forms of comedy such as restoration comedy. For example, William Congreve, The Way of the World, that is in 17th century, which combined satires with a more complex character. Next one, French comedy, that is playwrights Molière. Example, Tartuffe adapted Johnson's satirical approach criticizing societal flaws in a more sophisticated style. In conclusion part, the comedy of humor developed by Ben Jonson is an important milestone in English drama. Its focus on realism, satire, and more lessons made it a powerful way to critique society and human behavior. While it lacked the emotional depth and complexity of Shakespeare's works, its sharp societal commentary made it a unique and valuable genre. Johnson's influence on later writers ensured that the comedy of humor remains a significant chapter in the history of comedic literature. Let me recall this chapter. Why is Shakespeare considered a greater classic than Johnson? Shakespeare is considered greater because his characters are more natural, realistic, and multidimensional. While Johnson's characters are fixed and exaggerated, Shakespeare's characters feel like real people with complex emotions and motivation. Next one, what does Johnson's satire focus on? Johnson's satire focus on exposing societal flaws, vice, and individual weakness. That is, he highlighting the absurdities of human behaviors and societal norms to encourage reforms and reflection. Next one, what is the key difference in the portrayals of men and women in Johnson's and Shakespeare works? Johnson characters are realistic but lack idealism, while Shakespeare characters are romantic and idealized. That is, Johnson focused on the flaws of everyday people, while Shakespeare often presented characters with notable or heroic qualities in romanticizing settings. Next one, name one of the Ben Jonson's most famous work. Every Man in His Humour is one of the Ben Jonson's most famous work. This play is a classic comedy of humor and introduced Johnson's unique approach to character and satire. Next one, what type of comedy did Ben Jonson draw inspiration from? Johnson draws inspirations from classical Roman comedies by playwrights like Plautus and Terence. That is, these Roman writers also used stock characters and satirical plots which Johnson adapted for an Elizabethan audience. Next one, how does Johnson depict society in his comedies? Johnson depicts society realistically, focusing on its flaws, vice, and absurdities. His plays acted as a mirror, showing audience the moral and societal issues of their times. Next one, what is the tone of the comedy of humor? The tone is satirical, often harsh and biting. That is, Johnson used humor not just to amuse but to criticize, often in a way that felt sharp and direct. Next one, which literary period is associated with the comedy of humor? The comedy of humor is associated with the Elizabethan and Jacobean periods. These were late 16th and early 17th century during the reigns of Queen Elizabeth I and King James I. Next one, what role does realism plays in the comedy of humor? Realism plays a central role as it reflects familiar settings and the everyday lives of people. That is, by focusing on real life environments and relatable character, Johnson's plays engaged audience with authenicities. Why does the comedy of humor lack emotional depth? It lacks emotional depth because its characters are limited to specific traits and do not exhibit all-round development. That is, since characters are defined by a single humor, they don't grow or change, which makes the play more about satire than emotional. Thank you viewers. Thanks for watching this video.